We are sold out for the Pick Six podcast. Hello, everybody. I'm Sam McKewon along with Tom Shatel and Evan Bland here to talk about the Nebraska spring game on Saturday. Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Greetings.
Good.
Ready for spring football to be over? Yes.
One more for two more practices.
Yes. I thought it's been good. Like, I've enjoyed listening to all the coaches and stuff, but I'm ready for it to be done. We are a couple days out from the spring game. We will preview the spring game, the return of Frank Solich. We'll talk a little bit about that, the things that maybe we're watching for in the spring game, players, trends, quarterbacks. We'll definitely cover those things. I'll maybe a few minutes on Evan, talking to Evan about transfer portal. That stuff's going to heat up real quick after the game is over. We'll talk basketball a little bit. Huskers hosting a couple guys. I think they're probably a week out, two weeks out from things getting really, kind of having a clear sense of where the roster's going. And then, that's what we will hit on. Want to remind everybody to subscribe to the Omaha World-Herald. It is 26 weeks, $1. You sign up today, April 19th is when we're recording this. Let's say you wait until the spring game. You're going to go all the way through the first half of the Husker football season. Everything that happens, all the recruiting, all Matt Rhule, all Memorial Stadium 100th year stuff, all the volleyball playing in Memorial Stadium, all the Creighton stuff if that's what you're interested in. It's going to be all College World Series if you're interested in that. $1, 26 weeks. I would sign up for the World-Herald if I were you. Okay. Nebraska football spring game. It's been a month, ton of interviews, a lot of Matt Rhule. I think he's talked for more combined minutes than Scott Frost may have talked for all last season. So he's a good talker. He's been here, there, everywhere. And as we're on sort of the precipice of it, what maybe is the thing that the two of you have gleaned so far from spring camp, and what maybe is a thing just broadly you're thinking about? I'm kind of interested to see how this all turns out on Saturday. Like, what's that thing, Tom?
Oh, I don't know if I've gleaned much. I just tried to listen because there's been a lot of talking, and I don't know. I mean, I think the first spring game of a new coach is you're anxious to see what he looks like running out of the tunnel and on the field, and people as their first glimpse of the coach and in the stadium, and there's I don't know what we're going to see. It's like any other spring game. These things are more about recruiting now, the event, Frank Solich, Herbie.
That's right.
It's become this sort of this Nebraska Renaissance Festival, and it's more about the program, celebrating the program, which is probably the way it should be, because it is just a practice. I guess I want to see quarterbacks, but I don't know what they're going to be able to do. They're probably going to hand off a lot, probably throw a few short passes. And, then I'm going to wonder who's going to be there next week. But I'd be a lot more intrigued if I could see Casey Thompson running this offense right now. We're going to have to wait on that. Other than that, guys, I just attention to detail, right? I mean, tackling, hitting, is it going to be different or probably not yet? I'm guessing they're not there yet. So I think that's sort of the key thing to keep in mind about this. This is probably a 6-6 team next year, maybe a little bit more, maybe not. But they're not there even. They're not even there yet. So, it's not going to be perfect. But it's, again, the day is sort of about celebrating the new coach. And all the other things that are going to be there. So
they go 6-6 next year. The Quick Lane Bowl will be the most attended Quick Lane Bowl in the history of Quick Lane Bowls.
Well, I just threw that out there because
I think it's right.
You can't project 8 or 9. I mean, you can't, and so it's still 4-8. And he's been quick to say this spring, "Hey, everybody, there's a lot to do here," and I really liked his comment last week about this is not a show. This is, we're there to improve and work. And I still get the impression that he's got I don't know how many players, probably a good amount that don't hate losing yet. and he's going to get to the program where they hate losing more than they love winning. And there's still, I think you can tell, man, the standards is not there yet. These guys, we're really trying to kind of pull them along, getting them. I think that was what the whole competition angle was in the offseason, to try to find who wants to compete. But it's not perfect, and he has said as much along the way.
Evan, what do you watching
Well,
for? What have you heard so far in camp, and what are you watching for now?
I thought, to me, the best availability of camp was last weekend when Matt Rhule essentially comes right off the practice field from a scrimmage and talks to a handful of us for like 17 minutes about how the scrimmage went, and they set it up with that last play that we've written about and people know about, where the offense has it on the 9-yard line, the opponent's 9-yard line, 9 seconds to go, 2 plays. The offense doesn't score, but hey, the defense makes a boneheaded play. You get an untimed down. They score and walk it off. And I thought Matt Rhule's emphasis on situational awareness, situational understanding, really resonates with some of the struggles that Nebraska's had over the years. I mean, 9 and 28 in one possession games in the last 5 years. So many games that have slipped away, and for them to focus on those moments, the little things that go into winning, I thought was really key. And he said something about this week that they're doing leading up to the spring game, which was they're going to continue to hammer the situational awareness stuff home. And it's not so much about who wins in each of those moments, defense or offense, but it's about just being aware of it. What's the time situation? Where do you need to get to? I mean, how many times does it feel like over the years they didn't know where to get to?
He didn't make the defense run last week, and he let the offense go in. I thought when I first saw that somebody on defense threw a punch, I'm thinking, oh my God, I bet he went crazy. And I thought, I'm glad that happened, so he could see that this is what he's inheriting. This is the group he came to coach, and there's a long way to go. If you have a chance to win a game and some guy who loses his temper and throws a punch and the other team gets another chance and wins, can you imagine that happen? I guess Wisconsin or something? I mean, it would have just been a total meltdown. So I'm glad he saw that, because that just shows you how much there is to do.
It's totally on par with how they've lost games the last few years. I mean, they didn't lose one specifically that way, but it would be right in there with the rest of them. Yeah, as for this weekend, I still think the quarterback situation is really interesting. It seems like it would probably be best for Nebraska if Jeff Sims far and away dominated, if he looked like the man, and then that competition with Casey Thompson carried into the fall. But man, we haven't really seen Heinrich Harburg, in a couple years out there. He's, I think, one of the biggest movers of the spring. The staff loves what he can do, especially running the ball. Richard Torres, we haven't seen him at all in a Husker uniform in a live setting. And you guys maybe would know this better than me, but when's the last time Nebraska quarterbacks have been live in a spring game?
It's probably been a while.
I mean, I just think it sets up for a really interesting Saturday.
I'm really intrigued by Chubba Purdy, what he gets to do Saturday, and also Logan Smothers. Smothers has shown no inclination of I'm out of here, I'm done. He's hung in there, but now I can't pronounce
Heinrich Harburg.
Heinrich Harburg. Yes, thank you. Me and my H's. They're starting. I get a sense that they like you said, they like him. They like what he can bring. I wonder if that sense is evident in everyday practice, and other quarterbacks sensing, well, this guy is going to be ahead of me. Maybe I'm going to leave. They like him more than they like me. I'm really curious to see how that plays out in the next week, this Saturday. But again, I wonder about Casey Thompson. I wish he could play Saturday. I wish he was healthy. You start on the road. As we saw with Frost, the start of the actual program is so important. Starting with 2 road games, I'd be very tempted to, if Casey Thompson is good, I think he has to. I think you want to start with him, because you're on the road. You don't want to. I don't know how much Sims. if I'm very curious to see what we're going to see out of him Saturday too.
It's unbelievable how many times Nebraska has managed to get the screwiest schedule to start the season. In 2020, obviously the COVID thing at Ohio State. 2021, COVID. Ireland gets canceled. So they go to Illinois a week early. Then they go to Ireland, and now they get 2 straight road games. I mean, my goodness. Don't ever agree to this stuff again. That's my take.
That's good. Yeah.
Just don't ever. I mean, start with a home game. You know how many home games Michigan gets to start their season? 5.
5? Yeah.
5. It's like, how did the Big Ten do that? How can they do it? How did the Big Ten is like, you get 2 home games. We know you're going to have. I mean, unbelievable. Anyway,
I think Nebraska has to earn it. They've been at the bottom for so long.
Yeah.
It's like, and the Colorado thing probably just wind up that way. They got to earn it, but yeah, you're absolutely right. It's screwy.
I mean, Michigan just gets a great ramp. Now, Michigan's first road game is Nebraska, but they get a bunch of breaks before that. What did I hear? Well, I think I paid attention to the defense. I think that the whole truism that it's a year is probably true. I really appreciated some of Tony White's comments. I think there were probably some tough days for him in camp, challenging days when he learned maybe he wasn't always in his comfort zone. The last time he talked to us, I could tell that wasn't an easy day. That he was like, I got to get better at this, and it was clear that the guys weren't necessarily executing the things that he wanted them to, and they were moving a lot of players around. I'm not always sure that he was the one moving them around. He's the guy that's had to come in and like fit into the rest of them, which I don't think is easy. And I think he's had to try to learn that culture. And I think there's probably been some moments. And then, you already mentioned Rhule. I'll mention Satterfield. I think he's he's way different from Tony White. I think he has in his mind's eye what he wants to do. And I think he probably has some decent pieces with which to do it. But I found it notable that he used. I asked him, "What do you like about Heinrich Haarberg as a runner?" I said that because most people know Heinrich as a passer in high school. He was not much of a runner. They didn't run him that much. He probably ran for 500 yards as a senior. He probably could have run for 1,500 yards. And he actually used the phrase, Satterfield did, his superpower is running the ball and being physical. And that just gives you a sense of, I'm not trying to do anything by making this comparison, because clearly this person was a better overall athlete in many sports. But when I watch Haarberg play, there's a little bit of Bubba Starling there. As a football player, not as a basketball player or a baseball player. But like, same size, long striding. He'll just be interesting to watch. If you run that guy 15 times, I think you're going to like what you see. Jeff Sims is much same. And then, I'm really interested to see Torres. I'm really interested to see how they tackle. If they play with what I would call, I'm not a coach or a player, but what I call a leading edge. In other words, they're playing at or behind the line of scrimmage, and they're aggressive. And they're trying to create chaos instead of the mousetrap, where it's like, I'm going to be here, that guy's going to be there, and this guy in the middle is going to attack you. And you're going to get 4 yards, but you're not going to get a big play. I want to see this defense press the envelope and really wreak havoc all over the field. That'll be probably the thing that I'm watching for. Next question. As you think about so far what you've seen or heard in spring camp, and also what you think we're going to see on Saturday, and Tom kind of mentioned this is a 6-6 team. Does this roster seem significantly different than anything that we have seen in the last 7 or 8 years? Like, does it feel like a team that's just going to kind of muddle through and is going to have to try to get this done on its wits and savvy and craft?
I feel like there are some parts that are better. Like, if they're really talking about getting the 11 best offensive players on the field, like, could there exist a scenario where you have Thomas Fidone, Arik Gilbert, and Janarin Bonner all on the field at the same time? Like, maybe. And if that's the case, then whoa. I mean, you're talking about elite size and elite speed, which would be different. But, like, the offensive line isn't notably different. The quarterbacks, with the exception of Sims, are most of the same guys that we've seen here before. Like we've said, you can run out the same secondary as last year. We have a sense of what the linebackers will look like. So, no, I think in bits and pieces, but not an overhaul, I wouldn't say. And a lot of those guys will be here this summer, but no, not right now.
Good point.
No, it's a long way from being a really different roster. I think at least a year or two. What we're going to have to see this year is taking what they've had and making them better by coaching. And you lose Trey Palmer. Thinking about how many times that guy, they didn't win games, but they could have won. He had them close to winning games. Some of those games, certainly the Iowa game they won. They don't have him, but maybe the tight ends come into that slot. I don't feel like it's really different. I think I like Ben Scott. I like having a veteran at center. That's the most important position at offensive line. I like having a second year of Donovan Rhule as offensive line coach. But just for them, the talent is never been the issue as much as the way they played, the mistakes, tightening up, the attitude, playing a certain way on defense. I don't. They could have the same sort of roster, but also be a lot better in some ways. So maybe we'll see some of that Saturday.
Yeah, I think when I think about Nebraska's roster, one of the challenges, and Matt Rhule's talked about this. He's talked about, I think, on the interview with Andy Staples, just like, well, players win games, but he also talked about doing the right things win games. Like, it's not just good and bad players, but it's players who know what they're doing and doing the right things, and it's not just about talent acquisition, but it's about culture and formation and all those things. But if you're just looking at the players on the field, two things can be true at once. One, I think he thinks, you know what? There's some players here. This isn't a bad group. This isn't I'm starting from ground zero like he was at Baylor. But simultaneously, it's a group where I feel like, and I think people will see this on Saturday, especially at receiver. I think along the defensive line, maybe the running backs, where you're just like, they're going to have to be a sum that's greater than their parts, because their parts aren't going to add up to a bunch of wins. So their sum's got to be greater than that. And if there's one thing that Nebraska's really struggled with, really since 2016, and if you guys remember that team, that was the year that, that they had the 12 walk-on seniors, and Tommy Armstrong was the captain, and Jordan Westerkamp was there, and and Sam passed away, and they kind of galvanized behind that. And they won 9 games, largely because of their culture. They haven't really had that kind of team since then. They haven't had a sum greater as parts team. And so I think Matt Rhule's trying to build that. Like, he's trying to build a team that I think where everybody kind of is on the same page, and that maybe earns them a couple of games. I don't think they're more talented than last year, based on what I'm seeing right now.
No.
They're about the same.
Basically the same.
Yeah. Without Trey Palmer. Like, they're about as talented, but they don't have a second day NFL draft pick on their team. Like, I don't think they have that receiver. So,
but I think there's enough talent to win some games.
6.
And I think,
yes, yeah,
I really think what this program needs, and it's so important this year, is to learn how to win. And the more you win, the more you want to win. And I don't think this program has really wanted to win. They think they want to win. Of course, everybody wants to win, but they don't need it, and they need to get to the point where, man, this is fun. I want to keep doing this. And you lose, you're really pissed off, and they haven't had that in a long time. I think I don't know how you get to that point this year, but I think that's what the goal is for Matt Rhule right now. You can hear him talking about it.
Yeah.
And that's what those things are when you're throwing a punch on the goal line. If you really care about winning and want to win, you don't do that. So it's a discipline. The self-discipline really comes into play there. There's just so many things that they have to learn how to do.
Yeah.
But I think they have the right guy in place to do it, and it's just going to take a while.
How much weight do you guys put on this spring game specifically? Because it seems like over the years, especially recently, the spring game hasn't really been a game, and you kind of leave, and
been
you're
a farce
like,
the last 2
okay,
years.
whatever.
A farce.
But even when it was a game at times, you would see kind of these guys rise up that maybe didn't carry over into the season. Do you put more weight on this one, given that it's this first-year staff? You kind of get a first sense of personnel, and based on how it goes, it might inform who leaves out of the portal. Is there more weight on this spring game than maybe there is traditionally at Nebraska?
I think so. I think that there's more weight on the first one of a coach's new tenure for the reasons you just mentioned. I remember watching the 2018 spring game and going, they're not going after Joe Burrow. I wrote it. They don't need to go after Joe Burrow. I was wrong. I guess I was wrong. I don't know. I guess I was, and I guess they were too. But at that moment, Joe Burrow was not committed anywhere, and I think you went into that spring game thinking, okay, what's this kid got? And he had a lot in that game. And so I remember walking out of that game and going, they're not going after Joe Burrow. They got their guy. And they did. And so, I think you can actually I think that first spring game is the coach creates an environment where it's like, show me what you got. Because I don't know which one of you guys is going to be here. Now you get 3 years into it or 4 years into it, and what Nebraska's spring game became under Scott Frost was, I have to do this because 70,000 people show up, but I am going to put on the kind of spring game that people wish they didn't come to. That's what it became. I don't know if Matt Rhule will become that way, but you remember, 2 years ago, they forgot that Logan Smothers was even on the team for 2 quarters.
Right.
The backup quarterback didn't play in the game until late in the fourth quarter because Mario said he forgot. So it was a joke. Remember, they wouldn't tackle the starters, but in the second half when all the walk-ons got out there, they beat each other.
Yep, they pounded the heck out of them.
It's goofy. And so I think Matt Rhule, this first one is going to be a little bit more serious. Yeah.
Yeah, in general, spring games don't mean much, but I think what this one has to mean is what he said last week. It's not a show. And I do think Matt Rhule has a lot of showman in him, and I think he would love to put on a show, but that's not where they are right now. And they've got to take everything seriously. So this has to be one of the 15 practices where they try to get something done and try to get better. I really think they're going to be paying attention to approach, or the players are who is locked in, who's focused, who's making mistakes, who's really not paying attention. The competitive drive, that kind of stuff. I think that's what they're looking at right now. I think that this will, and then who plays well in front of a crowd and who does, of course, with these players, they're all used to it. But I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. It doesn't mean much, but I think it needs to mean a lot this year because of where they are.
Well, yeah. We'll just have to see what happens. I'm curious to see the quarterbacks. I'm curious to see what the Rovers do, whether the Rover is a prominent piece. I certainly hope that they don't hide that for the sake. I think you got to hide a lot of what you want to do on defense because of the first 2 games. You're going to probably unload some of your kitchen sink in the first 2 weeks. Because if Nebraska wins, I think we can be in universal agreement here. If Nebraska wins both of those first 2 games, there's something, and it would be a big something. Then you go and play 4 straight home games, it's like a house on fire. Oh, here we go. If they lose both those first 2 games, it's like, man, what an uphill climb this season's going to be. If they split them, which is what I think they'll do, it could go either way. But so much energy, I think, has to be put into those first 2 games, into winning them. And if they do, then I think you can almost say this team's got a shot of doing something in the West. So I don't know if we'll see a lot from the defense. Offensively, I think they want to run the ball, and they're going to take a couple of deep shots. That's my sense of it. Frank Solich is coming back this weekend. He's going to have a press conference on Friday in East Stadium. Why, I don't know, but okay, East Stadium. And then he's going to be honored at halftime on Saturday. This was announced 3 weeks ago, so we kind of already talked about it, but I'm just curious if anyone's thoughts have changed or feelings have. Do you get the sense that maybe when this thing happens Saturday, it's going to be pretty special?
I can't wait to see it. To me, it's the highlight of the weekend, but it's almost like seeing a ghost in a way, too.
Right.
Because it's been so long. There are almost a generation of people don't know Frank, don't remember, don't know who he was.
Right. It's true.
But it's just to see him back in the stadium and being honored and probably wearing a Husker shirt. It's going to be different. It's going to be great. It's going to be weird. It's going to be all those things. It's going to be special. But I really do feel like it's one of those moments that is going to resonate, and I think change the way things are around here. I think it's not just it's symbolic of the road back, and maybe the light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe I'm way over a line there, but I don't think so. I really think, and I can't. That's why I'm anxious to see what does it look like, what does it feel like. But I think it's going to be emotional.
Yeah, and I think it's just another reminder too that like the administration, those in power in Husker football are in alignment and are in touch with stuff like this. I mean, Trev Alberts, I thought his story about how he got Frank to come back after he'd been really hesitant to do so for a long time was powerful, about how this is not so much for you, Frank, but it's about the fans and what it means for them, and how that eventually put him over the top, and Matt Rhule's embracing of his return as well and what that can mean. Like, it's just it's cool, and then you kind of throw in the new Herbie logo. They're going to sell the merchandise and have the flags. It just feels like a very throwback weekend, but not in the way that Nebraska's had it in the past, where it's like, okay, we get it. It was that's ancient history. It feels fresher, more relevant somehow this time around.
It's gonna be important because I love how Nebraska fans care so much about Herbie, and obviously not all of them do, but a lot do, and this just falls into the line of, there are certain things that are just sacred and matter. What does it mean to be a Husker fan? What does it mean to be in Nebraska? And we sort of joke at it occasionally that sometimes the school kind of gets in its own way, trying to be something all the time when they should just be trying to win. But I really think this is a thing that is important because the program has been like lost in the desert, and it's in a hurricane. It's in all these. It's been at a place where they're always firing coaches and always being impatient, and they forgot how to play football, and they forgot this and that. I think it just falls into line of finding a happy place, finding a place where, you might be 7-5, but by God, you like who you are, you like your coach, and you're confident in what he's doing, and you don't always agree, but you feel like you're not just going to blow it up and start over. And I think going into the USC, UCLA, whatever else the Big Ten might do with realignment, it's going to be harder than hell to win 9 or 10 games all the time. I really feel it's important Nebraska to get back to a place. I think it's the biggest thing Trev Alberts has done, including hire Matt Rhule. Get to a place where it feels like Nebraska. Everybody's in agreement. This is the way it should be, and was just carry on. And whatever bad things or bumps are out there, you can survive them because you like who you are. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think Matt Rhule brings some things to the table that Nebraskans really respect, in the sense that I don't think he would ever be, if they go 7-5 this year, I think he'll be like, yeah, that's pretty good. But I think you do that in year 3 and he won't be happy. And they kind of need a coach who's going to work as hard as they are going to support. And I think they've got one who will do that and won't allow obstacles maybe to slow them down. I guess we'll find out. It's still a tough job, and nobody's been able to quite slay the job the way that Coach Osborne did many years ago, including Solich. And he did a lot. He did a lot of good things, but Osborne was unique in that way, and so you're always trying to get back to that standard. It's not always easy.
Did you have a Solich story to tell? I know you've had Solich memories. I didn't know if there's anything you wanted to share.
Tom was there too. So Tom covered his first teams. 98. I covered the 99 team the most closely. So in 98, I actually went down in the elevator with him. It was his first fall practice, which was interesting. And so I think they had it in the stadium. But yeah, like he was, different than Osborne. I think Tom wrote very eloquently about this. I think in 01, I think it took Solich time to really grow into becoming a head coach and to like really, really be it. And by the 01 game, I remember the column you wrote that day when they beat Oklahoma. And it wasn't just about the play, although the play was great. But that Frank Solich did some stuff that day, and he outdueled Bob Stoops. And that may have been his best day.
Yeah, it was.
And so, I remember that. I covered it all the way up through 2001. I wasn't really there in 02 when things kind of fell apart. And then by 03, the die was cast. I mean, he had to perform miracles to keep his job. So, I remember. So I covered the 99 team, which should have won the national championship and didn't. In part because it was a little dysfunctional. In part because Frank was still trying to learn how to juggle all those things. That's the thing where Crouch left practice. And then Corell Buckhalter left practice. It was that season was a mess. But they went 12-1, and they were the best team in the country. They were better than Florida State, which won the national title. They lost that game in Texas largely because they fumbled it 19 times, in part because they had the wrong running back coach. And maybe you disagree with that, but I think they did. So there was a lot of things going on there where, like if Coach Osborne had still been the coach, and there's players who disagree with me about this, I think they would have won a couple more national titles. I really do. But whatever it is, I mean, he certainly was a legend, a truly nice guy. Like, he was a nice guy. He was hard, I think, on his players, but he was nice to us, always fair to us. So it'll be good to... I saw him, like, in 2018. Know who I was. That's okay. I don't always know who I am, but it'll be a good story to report this weekend. I want to talk a little about recruiting, because this has now become a big recruiting weekend. And here's another opportunity where I get to say I'm wrong.
Whoa.
Which I love. I love saying I'm wrong. They haven't recruited quite as well as I thought they would so far.
So by that you mean they haven't recruited as quickly?
I thought they'd have more commits.
Okay.
I never sold on Dylan Raiola, and it sounds like he's moving toward Georgia, and I'd be wrong about that too. That really surprises me, that he would turn down USC to go to Georgia. It does. Georgia just had another 5-star quarterback leave the program. And maybe what he wants is what maybe what Dylan Raiola would want in Georgia is what his dad would love to see, which is if Dylan goes there, he's going to be held super accountable, and he will not be any different than any of the players on that campus. He won't. Right. It'll be a 5-star. Yeah, well, we got 12 of them on defense, so nobody's going to kiss your rear end. And maybe that's what he wants. Like, he maybe wants to go to a place where he is a cog in the wheel, because the wheel is like, $100,000 wheel. Maybe that's what he wants. But so I've never sold on Nebraska getting him. I think that was going to be a tough one, a tough thing to just want to hold on to. But I thought they would have a few more commits by now. Yeah, I did. I thought maybe a couple of these kids that have committed around the Midwest, went to Wisconsin, went to Minnesota, Michigan. Yeah. Now maybe I'm all wet and maybe I'm dumb. Like, maybe I thought they'd have 5 or 6 by now. But I get the sense going into this weekend that it's kind of like... And then Matt Rhule said the thing about, receivers not trusting that Garrett McGuire can coach him. And Matt Rhule's really transparent. Like, sometimes he says stuff and you're like, I'm surprised you said that. That was one of them. I was like, why would you say that?
Well, he said another thing last Saturday in this same vein, which was the guys that are near and dear to him are, 1, the guys that he inherits that listen before things have been proven, and then 2, the recruits who sign on before the success starts coming. I mean, you can tell. I think that was a pointed message toward prospects that are listening that say, hey, have some faith ahead of time and come in and don't wait for this thing to get rolling.
And again, I'm not saying that they're not good recruiters. What I will say is that some of them are kind of doing this for the first time at this level, and some of them are young. And so, there's negative recruiting that can be done based on that. And when you decide you're going to recruit Texas and New Jersey and California, and you're going to recruit those 3 states hard, you're going in on a lot of competition. Like you're not going after this, low-level 3-star in Illinois or in Iowa. You're going after, the filet mignon. That's hard. So like they have a visitor this week, Brandon Baker. Mm-hmm. This is his 2nd time. He's a 5-star in one service. He's a 4-star in another. Bottom line is he's a top 30 player. This guy's going to be hard to get. You know how I know? Because they don't get linemen from California very often.
Nope.
Why? Because they don't want to go somewhere cold. They don't. And they usually don't. They usually go to Alabama or Texas or stay on the West Coast. So they got him coming. They have another guy from Long Beach Poly, Dylan Williams, linebacker. That's going to be a hard pull.
Oh, yeah.
Carter Nelson, best player in the state. Oh, by the way, visited Alabama and Georgia a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
He's not going to be an easy pull. And you've talked to him.
Right.
I don't think it's going to be an automatic pull for him.
No given.
I think that kid, if he gets a chance to go to Georgia, Brock Bowers going to the end. It's like a tight end pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
They got another guy from California who I don't think, they're not getting that guy. Then they got some Texas guys. Makai Sena, coming from the same school as Ishmael Smith-Flores. And
Arlington Martin.
Jeremiah Charles. Is that his name? Yeah. Mm-hmm. DeAndre Barnes is from Colorado. Jeremiah Charles is from Texas. Willis McGahee's kid's coming.
He's been here already before.
Yes.
Too.
That's great.
Then they got some other guys coming they're interested. Some guys from Texas. They got a guy, Jordan Ochoa, coming from the Denver area who doesn't have an offer yet. They need to see him physically. It's not a bad group of players, but I don't know. I'm just a little surprised that they haven't. The 500 mile is filling up, man. 8 of the 13 players in Iowa, they're off the 9-13. They're already off the board. 9 of 20, 9 of 21 in Missouri off the board. 5 of 8 in Minnesota off the board. 5 of 10 in Colorado off the board. These guys are gone. So you're probably not getting them. So you're going to have to do a lot of your recruiting from distance.
And the next couple weeks will be huge, right? I mean, how many times over the years has Nebraska landed a kid and they said, the spring game opened my eyes, and my God, how many people in the crowd there were, and I think they're going to reap a fair amount from whatever happens this weekend, and maybe quickly. I think the next week, between the portal and coming out of the spring game with recruiting, probably going to see a lot of action going on. I don't know. If this was the previous staff, I don't know how far ahead they would be in terms of commits at this point. I mean, what's standard right now? 5, 6? They have 3. So I guess I hadn't thought too much about it, other than the fact that you're right. There has been this trend where a lot of these juniors have been committing earlier, like you said, to Michigan, Minnesota, some of these schools that have gotten earlier commits maybe than we would have thought. But I don't know. I just think the power of getting kids on campus and swaying them, especially on a game day like atmosphere, will make a difference.
Let me, Tom, do you have a thought? Because I'll answer the question.
Well, they're going after the right guys. Obviously, they got to win, and they've got to. Some of these guys, all the sales pitches and everything are great, but they need to see evidence, and because when you're going up against Georgia, they have evidence. And
they do.
The guys are going after obviously are the kind of type A players, type A personalities who I'm sure NIL is a big factor, but they want to win, and so they don't want to build; they want to win. So right now you've got to find some guys who also want to build. So. I'm fine right now. I want to see evidence, and I want to see development, and I'm not worried about coming out of the gate with a load of recruits, as we've seen. Recruiting in the last year or two has flipped. It's changed. It's on its head, because you may get a kid, and he's a 4 or 5 star. And then he leaves you in 2 years. So what the hell good was that? So I'd rather get him on the backside. Maybe you get some of the other guys on the way on the way home in 2 years. So after you've shown that you can do it. So let's not write anybody off who might not sign. Let's see if they can get them on the way back. I hate to say it like that, but that's kind of where we are.
And so here's an opportunity where I get to say I'm wrong again. So Nebraska has 3 commits right now. In 2018, going into the 2019 class, Frost had 2.
Okay.
Riley had 3. And 2 of them had committed for a long time before. Brian Brokop and John Raritan, who committed in the 2014 season after the Miami game. And then Bo, in his first cycle, had 1. Now, let us back up for a second. Neither Bo nor Mike Riley openly admitted, and this is typical Mike, that they really didn't know what they were doing. That's the wrong way. They didn't really know where to build the relationships when they got here. He told it. He said, well, it took about a year. Yeah, you think when one of your coaches goes up to Omaha and asks if there's a Catholic league, when one of your other coaches asks, where's Beatrice? When another coach says, well, we've never actually recruited the Midwest. We've only recruited California and Texas. So Riley's not a good analog. Scott, they had a good 2019 class, but they didn't get it rolling until June. They did. They had a good class. Now, a lot of the players left. And then Bo, I don't know. Who cares? I mean, Bo back in 09. Bo Pelini did things differently as a recruiter. We all know that. I'm not saying he did it wrong. He got Rex Burkhead in his 09 class. Pretty damn good player, I'd say. Mm-hmm. So Bo didn't do things necessarily the wrong way, but he did them very differently, and that was they built their classes late. Like, December, January, February. They signed a lot of players in those last 2 or 3 months, and maybe that's the way Rhule will do it. So yeah, they're not necessarily far behind their old pace. That said, they are behind, what maybe some other schools are doing. And I've just gotten the sense that Rhule wants to hit the gas pedal a little bit. That's the sense I've gotten. That it's like they've put a lot of work in, they've busted their butts, now they want to get a little bit of, dividends from that.
I think that's where his comment came from last Saturday about all right, jump in, have a little faith.
Yeah.
Look at our track record elsewhere about developing guys and come aboard. And I just think Saturday will spur that along. I really do. I bet you'll see multiple commits in the week following the spring game.
Let me ask you.
Big prediction.
I don't.
Over under 1.5.
The comment about Deion Sanders. What were the context of that? Was he asked specifically about Deion, or was he asked about the portal, or how did that happen?
I don't know, honestly.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead and explain it to our listeners.
Well, the quote begins. I see there's a coach out there or somebody calling for transfers to come to their school, advertising or however he said it. We're not doing that here, but we're coaching the players we have, and people have lost their minds about that. It's a big national story. It was on Tony Kornheiser yesterday. They debated, and I guess ripped Rhule for saying it.
That was silly.
Well, what was the context of it?
I think that was something he said last Saturday, where essentially was, some places you look forward to the portal and guys that are leaving here, we're just looking forward to coaching our guys.
Yeah.
And he didn't mention any school or any coach.
But he said somebody's out there advertising for players. Somebody's calling for players to come to, because Deion
that was a comment made on Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay. Was he asked about it, or did he?
It
bring
was
it up
just
himself?
a general it was a general spring game.
It was about
question
the transfer portal because it was opening.
Okay.
From a couple weeks ago.
I
thought it was
curious.
a nothing burger as it pertains to Colorado. But
I agree. I think people are obviously bored right now. There's not much to talk about, but I just thought that was interesting that because he didn't really call out Deion by name,
No.
And I just wonder if he was actually talking about him. Maybe it's somebody else is
I
doing
think he
it.
probably was.
Yeah.
It's hard to call Deion out because Deion's not. The only thing that I would say about, like, it's really hard to call Deion out now. Deion's at a Power 5 school, and he should do whatever the hell he needs to do to build that program. When he was at the other school that he was at, like, I think he did wonders for that school, but simultaneously it was true that he was going to leave, and he was probably going to take some of his best recruits with him, which he did. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of a tough deal, for a great school like Jackson State, home of Walter Payton and all the rest. But at Colorado, what can you say? Like, he's got to do everything he can do.
There's two different approaches, and what he's doing is right for him. So, I just thought it was almost like Rhule was kind of patting himself on the back a little bit. Well, I coach our player. I'm not like other guys, So I don't know if that's what he was trying to say or not.
What's funny is that's not the most transparent thing about Colorado that he said. I thought the most transparent thing was a couple months earlier about the video. Yeah, we're not going to have a video camera following me around behind the scenes. We're just going to handle that internally.
And when we do videos, it's not of us talking.
Yeah, exactly.
Interestingly, though,
and that never popped up.
He doesn't have that camera following him around, but it sure feels like he does. Because he's everywhere. And there's a camera everywhere he's at. And I'm not saying anything like that, but WWE,
right?
He's right behind the thing. And it's great. People love that. But I think you need that. And I think what Deion is doing, you need that too.
Oh, they do, yeah. So no question.
I think it's two different ways to do it. They're gonna meet on the field in a few months, and it's gonna be fascinating.
It will. I look forward to talking about that like 3 or 4 times because, man, that's going to be a great day in Boulder. Hopefully the weather's good. It probably will be. Because, I don't think there's just not a lot of things you can say negative about Deion at this moment.
No.
Because that program it's honestly not where Nebraska is, even though they beat Nebraska twice. That program, if you needed to kick everybody off the team and start over, I mean, that's the one job where you can say he can go do what he wants and succeed or fail on his own efforts. And, he probably does need to do all the talking and all the we're coming.
But I think Rhule...
And he hired a hell of a staff.
But I think Rhule was also speaking for a lot of coaches who maybe would have said that. Like, okay, you can't just get rid of everybody. You got to try to coach them up. You got to try to coach up the players you're getting. And a lot of coaches I do believe in that. But Deion right now is, I'm not even going to, the thing here is so bad, they want to leave, I'm going to bring in guys. And but you know what? You could do that. You couldn't do that 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
Right.
You could do that now. And college basketball, we're seeing that it's easier. It's only 5 guys. But we're seeing that now. And that's how the game is. You're not building a team. You're a program. You're building a team. And so it's fascinating. And what Deion is doing, probably a lot of coaches might want to do it too, but they don't have the guts. They are Deion Sanders, and he's not going to get fired for doing it.
That's right.
But on the other hand, he's also creating a program where you're not building, you're not developing, you're bringing guys in, and those guys, half of them are probably going to leave in a year or two. You're going to bring in some more guys. So it becomes all about the portal, and then maybe you win, and then you leave, and what do you leave behind you? So it's a fascinating thing. There are two different approaches.
Right.
The one Nebraska has is the right one for it, and Colorado has the right one for it. And again, they're going to come out of the tunnels, Folsom Field, probably the last time I'll ever get to go there. I love it. And,
probably is for all of us.
And it'll just be absolutely wonderful.
That'll be great. No, that's really interesting. So Matt Rhule got a win over Deion when he got Malachi Coleman. Because, obviously Coleman went out there, and Deion tried to sell him, and he came back, and Matt Rhule won. And so that was notable, right? That was
notable. It was.
But we'll just have to see. The recruiting conversation is interesting to me. I think you've probably seen on the Husker Football Nation, Twitter feed, Nebraska Football Twitter feed. They've been doing these little coach features, and I like them. They're good, but they're on Twitter, and I think some of that is, hey, we want you to get to know our coaches. I think a lot of these coaches are not that well known. They're just not that well known. And it's not their fault. A lot of them are young, and they're relatively new. And, I think E.J. Barthel, I love listening to that guy. I do. But, he's where he's coached. And so you're wading into the water where you're going against OU and Texas for football players. And, I think that's great that he was able to get Quentin Ives, this guy from, a small town, or not small town, but in a lesser-known area of New Jersey, just outside of Philadelphia. But he's not going to be able to do that every year. Like, you can't do the diamond in the rough thing. Like, you have to go get, top-shelf players. And, you don't go get Gabe Ervin. I mean, everybody knew who Gabe Ervin was when they went and got him. And so, I think there's an intentionality of guys, the Nebraska brand, they haven't won any games in 6 years. Until we win some games, we better make sure everybody knows who we are, and we better also make sure that we're recruiting at a leading edge. They're very aggressive, and they've done a lot of work, and it's been very impressive. I just think I get the sense that there's a desire to get some commits.
Well, and here's the other thing about the recruiting that's interesting to me, and we talked with Matt Rhule about this, and he has a history of this. When he's at Temple, he acknowledged that he wasn't going to beat Penn State head-to-head for a lot of those guys. And so what does he do? He tries to find guys who are as fast, have similar measurables, but maybe they're not quite as big. Maybe they're not quite as strong. Maybe they're not quite as polished. He goes to Baylor, and he has said there, we're not going to beat Texas or Texas A&M head-to-head on a lot of guys. And so you find ways to work around that. You guys who are a little smaller, but they can be developed. And I feel like there's sort of a calmness. I mean, you talk about Rhule wanting to get up and going and start building momentum, and I'm sure that's true. But even if they don't hit on a ton of the top guys that they want right now, I think there's a confidence because they've done it before that they can still find guys who measure well, who can be developed, who can turn into good players down the road. Whereas, we talked about the Mike Riley and Scott Frost, Bo recruiting eras. When they would miss on guys, sometimes the guys that they brought in were sort of panic ads late. I think that's fair to say. Reaches, maybe. And it feels like there's more of a confidence that even if you don't get the 4-star, the high 4-star, whatever, you can get a 3-star and turn him into something comparable in a couple of years.
I think, this is longer for another day, but I think Bo Pelini's approach to recruiting actually turned out okay, even if the intention he had behind it was rushed. In other words, I think a lot of what they did is, hey, we're going to coach the team. We're going to pay a lot of attention to winning games and coaching the team. We're not going to have two minds during the season. And then when we're going to get to December, we'll just hurry up and catch up. As it turns out, Bo Pelini is such a good talent evaluator on the defensive side of the ball that they actually fell into some really good players late, even though they had no business doing that, because he was good at that. So, I don't know that the plan was good, but when they got to it, he'd be like, Chris Jones. Well, yeah, I mean, you were right. Or Kevin Maurice. And he was right. He had a gift for doing that helped them out. But in other positions, they would just whiff. I mean, you'd be like, what are you thinking there? And they had a couple of that situation with quarterback a couple times. But as it turned out, they would get some players late because he could go out, or his staff, Carl, could be like, I called this guy and this guy, Leroy Alexander. They were just good at that. So anyway, speaking of recruiting, let's talk basketball for a second. Transfer portal, Huskers signed Rinkmast and Bryce Williams, and they signed him. Boy, they signed him. They weren't going to screw around with wait until the kids showed up later. They signed him right away. So those guys cannot go anywhere else. I think maybe there may have been a concern. Well, somebody else is coming on. They signed him. So they're done. Now they're trying to get maybe a couple of more. Garon McPherson leaves the program. And now you had Latrell Wrightsell Jr., son of Latrell Wrightsell Sr., visit last weekend. Jaden McCollum, the Siena transfer point guard, visited as well. He committed to Oklahoma. He's done. So he committed to Oklahoma today. He was supposed to do it tomorrow, but he did today. So now they're hosting Hunter Salas this weekend. And that's a really interesting host. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he's at Wake Forest this week. He'll go to then Nebraska. and we'll just have to see what happens. My sense is that if Hunter wants to play at Nebraska, and Nebraska wants Hunter there, and I think they do, that Latrell Wrightsell Jr. will be pretty excited about the possibility of playing with Hunter. It's possible that those two could commit if Hunter feels good about Nebraska. There's other places he can go, but I think there's a real opportunity there. And if that happens, then I think you could have, your 2 more signees. And then they got another guy, Josiah Alec, who's likely visiting. His younger sister is the volleyball player, Becca. Mm-hmm. Josiah was the running mate with Donovan Williams back in the day at Lincoln North Star. They were a pretty darn good team.
Right.
They made the state semifinals one year. Donovan got all of the headlines at the time. Josiah's turned out to be the better college player. And so he's got 1 more year left, and he's a great rebounder. Not necessarily the best shooter, but a great rebounder. And he would be a true 4. So he's a guy that you would bring in. You wouldn't be asking him to score 10 points a game. You'd be asking him to score maybe 5 or 6, but get you 7 boards. And just throw elbows around and be physical in the Big Ten. So it's possible they could add 3 guys from in-state. That'd be kind of cool. Be really interesting. And then this Sunday is the deadline for any player, including Keisei Tominaga, to go into the NBA draft pool. You can retain your eligibility up till the end of May, and you can go through the process. And so Keisei will have that option if that's what he wants to do. He may just come back and not try the NBA. He may not do that. But those are sort of the developments in Husker hoops.
Would those be the last additions that they would make? Are they looking to add 2 more guys, essentially?
Well, it depends on if those players don't want to come here, then they're going to have to keep looking for a point guard.
They've got 3 spots, I believe.
They have 3 spots.
Okay.
My understanding, it's kind of explained to me, is, there's guys that can leave if it's clear that the writing is on the wall, that we just added someone else. And I think that's kind of what happened with McPherson. I don't think he was in a hurry to go anywhere, but I think it was more of a, we feel pretty good about where we're at with this. We're going to be adding some players, just so you know. So, they have 3 left. We'll see. They had 2, and then McPherson left. Now they have 3. And maybe in theory they have 4. But that player hasn't left yet, or doesn't know they're leaving, or doesn't sure what they're going to do, and all the rest. It's a big year for Hoiberg, no question about it.
Yeah.
Just a huge, huge year. They probably got to go to the NIT for sure, and an NCAA tournament berth would be crucial. We'll mention the women here really shortly. They signed a player, Darian White, from Montana State. She's a transfer. I like the signing. She's a shorter guard, but she was a really good defender in the Big Sky. The last player they got from the Big Sky was Bella Cravens, and she was a really good fit. Players in the Big Sky tend to be tough. I think this gal's tough. I think she's tough. She goes to the rim. She doesn't shoot a lot of threes, so she'll be somebody who can get to the rim, who shoots free throws and plays defense. They still need to add, in my opinion, another 3-point shooter, and they really need to add. They really, really need to add an enforcer inside, like somebody who goes toe-to-toe with Michigan State and Rutgers and some of the teams that Nebraska struggled to beat. I mean, they've struggled to beat Iowa too, but Iowa just has better players, no offense. They have Caitlin Clark. But they shouldn't lose to Michigan State and Rutgers. They really shouldn't. They have better players than those teams, but they lose because they're not quite as tough. And so I think they need an enforcer. They need somebody like Bella Cravens, who left. If they add those 2 things, if they add a 3-point shooter, when they add an enforcer, all the better. I am curious to see if they bring any visitors in this weekend. I'm really curious to see if Anissa Morrow is one of them. For people who don't know who that is, that's one of the best players in the country, the number 2 transfer in the country behind Haley Van Lith. Played at DePaul the last 2 years. Went for 30 and 15 against Creighton. Her older brother was Ed Morrow, who played here for 2 years. Her dad played football in Nebraska. I think her mom went to Nebraska. She left DePaul. She could probably play almost anywhere in the country. Nebraska would be a great fit for her, though. It would be really good. I'm curious to see if she's there on Saturday. And if so, then we're talking about a whole different deal. We're talking about a whole different kind of season that they're potentially able to have if she joined the team. A lot of people say, "Wow, what about Haley?" No, a lot of these players are not coming here. They're going to Haley Van Lith's probably going to UConn. That's probably where she's going to go. She's not going to Iowa. That kind of thing. The Lauren Betts gal out of Stanford is probably going to Iowa. Might be. But Morrow they got a chance at. Maybe they get her. They need somebody like that. They need somebody in the low post who can throw elbows and is tough, and Morrow is all those things, plus she's a great scorer. So we'll see.
Lots going on as the portal turns.
That's right. Lightning halted the game last night. Nebraska was going to win that game. That's too bad.
And they may yet. It's not like
Well, they will.
they're
Yeah, they might.
missing the chance to win it.
That game was theirs to win. Service shouldn't have brought that pitcher back in for a second inning. He was asking.
Sure, when your guy with a 13 ERA wiggles out of it the first time, your best bet's probably not to go back to that well.
And he sprinted off after he got out of that inning. He sprinted off the field like he was sprinting out of the stadium. Like, I'm getting the hell out of this place. And then they sent him back out there, and I'm like, we'll talk more about this later. Bryce Matthews has one sweet swing.
He does.
Boy, he had a hard night in the field, but man, can he hit a baseball.
I think he crushed it 433 feet to left.
Over the tree.
That's crazy.
All the way to the Gordon complex.
He's shooting up draft boards right now. He's going to be a high draft pick here in July.
Well, he's got a beautiful swing. Like, that's just and he can hit a ball at or below his knees. Out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Pretty impressive. And Max Anderson's great, too. All right. That is our Pick 6 podcast for this week. For Tom and Evan, I'm Sam. We'll be back next week to recap the spring game and maybe talk about any transfer portal additions for the Husker team. Thanks a lot.